My name is Fred Carter. I'm 62 years old, and I built half of downtown San Diego with my own hands. Strip malls, luxury condos, 2 office parks, and the city's largest dog park. They all have my fingerprints buried somewhere beneath the concrete. For 30 years, I worked sunup to sundown, skipping holidays, missing birthdays, pouring every ounce of energy into something I could leave behind. I thought I was leaving it for my daughter. So imagine this. I drive 2 hours to Lake Tahoe on a Friday afternoon, already picturing the lake breeze against my face, the smell of pine, the quiet hum of nothing. I pull into the circular gravel driveway of my villa, my escape. My wife's sanctuary before cancer took her, and I see 2 people standing on my private terrace. Bathrobes, coffee mugs, laughter. And then I hear it. Dad, you're not allowed here. My daughter, my only child. Kelly stands there with the sun glowing behind her like some kind of halo. But her eyes are cold, flat. She doesn't wave. She doesn't smile. She doesn't even flinch when I step out of the car and say her name like a question. Kelly. She crosses her arms. We got here first. You didn't tell us you were coming. I blink. The words feel like they belong in a different conversation, in someone else's nightmare. I try again. This is my house? No, she says. It's the villa. And it's ours now. Palmer, her husband, shifts nervously behind her. He's always been soft-spoken, the kind of man who asks before he breathes. I look at him, hoping for some explanation. But he won't meet my eyes. Come on, sweetheart, I say, forcing my voice to stay even. I just wanted the weekend. You could have called. I didn't even know you were. Kelly cuts me off with a flick of her wrist. We're spending the weekend here. Romantic getaway. Go back to San Diego. It's not just the words. It's the way she says them. Like I'm a delivery guy at the wrong address. My hands start to tremble. Not from anger, at least not yet, but from the sheer absurdity of it all. The villa's in my name. I designed the damn floor plan with Elizabeth. Picked out every fixture. Every tile. That oak banister? I sanded it myself. That skylight above the kitchen island. Elizabeth's idea. She loved cooking in the sunlight. Now my daughter's telling me to leave. I glance down at the weekend bag in my hand. A toothbrush. 2 books. A bottle of wine I was going to open tonight. The bag slips a little, the leather catching my wrist. My knees feel stiff, like they're refusing to move forward until the universe corrects itself. But the universe stays silent. Get out of here. Dad, you're just in the way, Kelly says, loud enough for the trees to hear. Palmer finally mutters, maybe we can talk about this. But she snaps at him too. No. He always does this. Shows up uninvited like he owns everything. Because I do own everything. Still, I nod like an idiot. Okay. Okay? I'll go. Her shoulders relax. Next time. Call first. I walk back to my car like I'm walking through sand. Every step heavier than the last. I don't remember starting the engine. But the purr of German engineering fills the silence. In the rearview mirror, I catch one last glimpse of them. Palmer takes her mug and sits beside her. She raises her cup toward the lake. A toast. Or maybe a goodbye. If you've ever been blindsided by the people you gave everything to, I want you to stay with me. Like, comment, subscribe. Because I'm not telling this story for revenge. I'm telling it for justice. And trust me, when it came, no one saw it coming. Fade to black. Then re-enter with somber tone. I spent that night back in San Diego, in the study Elizabeth used to fill with jazz records and quiet humming. I sat there with lukewarm coffee and my old leather chair creaking every time I shifted. My phone stayed silent. I thought maybe Kelly would call. Maybe she'd say she was stressed. Maybe she'd apologize. Say the words had come out wrong. But by Sunday, the realization sunk in. She wasn't going to call. Not to explain. Not to check on me. Not even to lie. Then Monday night, my phone rang. I stared at the screen like it was something radioactive. Kelly. I picked up. Dad, she said, tone clipped and businesslike. Palmer and I have decided the villa belongs to his parents now. At first I thought I'd misheard. Excuse me. It's theirs now. Carl and Margaret. They're moving in next week. Silence. Then she added, You're not to go there anymore. My hand tightened around the phone. Kelly. That house is mine. Actually, you never visit. And they really need stable housing. It just makes sense. 30 years of sacrifice. The back surgeries. The nights Elizabeth stayed up balancing invoices so I could meet payroll. The way she held my hand when I pitched our last investment property, it all ran through me like a fever. It's mine, I said. Mine. You don't get to give it away. Kelly laughed. No warmth. Just knives. You're being ridiculous. You're old and alone. What do you need a lakeside villa for? That was the moment something inside me snapped. Not with rage, but with clarity. You think this is about property? I asked. No. Dad. It's about selfishness. You're hoarding resources like some kind of bitter king. There was so much I could have said. About her wedding I paid for. The college she dropped out of. The car she totaled that I replaced without question. But I didn't. Instead, I said something I hadn't said in years. No. Dead air. What did you just say? I said no. Kelly. You don't get to steal from me. You can't say no to me. But I already had. And it would not be the last time. When I hung up, the silence in my study was different. No longer passive. It felt like preparation. Something in me had changed. And the next morning, I made coffee, opened my laptop, and started researching California property law like a man with nothing left to lose. Because the next time someone tried to take something from me, I wasn't going to fight back with words. I was going to use the law. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I sat in the leather chair Elizabeth picked out 15 years ago, the one with the deep creak that always made her laugh. Back then, I used to joke that it sounded like the chair groaned under the weight of all my stress. Now it just sounded like a memory too loud to ignore. Outside, San Diego's night air hummed with sirens, buses, the occasional distant bark of a dog, but inside, it was just me, the silence, and the smell of burned coffee. I had replayed the call with Kelly a dozen times in my head. Every word, every tone, the cold businesslike cadence of her voice, not a hint of hesitation, not a shred of remorse. Palmer's parents are moving in. It's their home now. That phrase kept circling back. Like a mosquito I couldn't swat away. It wasn't just disrespect. It was erasure. She was erasing me from something I built with my bare hands. From something her mother and I created out of love. With plans for every corner, every tile, every window facing the lake. That villa wasn't just a structure. It was ours. Elizabeth and I had dreamed of retiring there. She even joked about building a rose garden by the back deck once we both slowed down. Instead, cancer took her at 59, and now her memory was being bulldozed by our daughter and some in-laws I'd never even shared a meal with. I needed clarity, and when I couldn't find it in the present, I reached for the past. Around 3:40 am. I got up, walked to the hall closet, and unlocked the cedar chest Elizabeth had insisted we keep after her diagnosis. My memory box. She called it. I hadn't touched it since the funeral. The smell of cedar hit me like a wave. Inside were the usual things, old Polaroids, a few of her scarves, a dried rose from our 25th anniversary, and at the bottom, an envelope, cream-colored, my name on it, in her handwriting. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Fred, if you're reading this, it means I'm not there anymore to be the voice in your head when things get loud. I hope I was loud enough when I was alive. I hope I loved you loudly enough. I hope you still drink your coffee black and curse at the evening news. Mostly, I hope you never let your kindness be used against you. You've always had a soft heart beneath that tough shell. Don't let anyone weaponize it. Not even our daughter. Especially not her. I read it twice, then a third time. I don't remember crying. But when I looked down, my shirt was soaked near the collar. That was my turning point. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to plead. I was going to act. That morning, I did what I do best. I started with the blueprint, not actual construction blueprints, but legal ones. California's property statutes, real estate transfer law, joint tenancy rules. I treated it like any other project I'd managed, just with more emotional blood in the cement. I pulled the deed from my home safe. My name. Sole owner. No secondary signatory. Not even Kelly. That was step 1. Step 2. I needed professional reinforcement. By Wednesday morning, I was in the elevator of a glass high-rise downtown, heading toward the office of Marcus Chen, real estate attorney, Harvard Law, sharp as a knife and calm as a pond. He'd handled my business contracts for over 15 years, every land acquisition, every commercial lease. We weren't close friends, but he always remembered Elizabeth's name. That counted for something. Fred, he said, standing as I entered. Still wearing those god-awful loafers I told you to burn back in '09. Still better than your neckties, I shot back. We both smiled. Then his expression shifted when he saw the folder in my hand. I sat down across from him and placed it on his desk. I need to protect the Lake Tahoe villa. He opened the file, thumbed through the deed copy, the property tax statements, the insurance documents, family dispute. Worse, I said. My daughter's trying to give it away. He paused. As in, gift it. To whom? Her husband's parents. Carl and Margaret Thompson. Do they live in California? Ohio. He blinked. So she's giving a California property to out-of-state in-laws without your permission. Correct. He leaned back in his chair. Fred, that's not just audacious. That's legally impossible unless you co-sign something. Or she has power of attorney. I didn't. And she doesn't. Marcus tapped his pen on the folder. Okay. First thing, we locked down the title. You're sole owner. No transfer can occur without your signature. Next, we secure a revocable living trust. Place the villa in it. And name yourself as trustee. That adds a layer of protection. How fast can that happen? If you get me all documents today, by end of the week. I nodded. Do it. He made a note. Fred, may I ask what's really going on here? I hesitated. Then I told him, all of it. The dismissal. The bathrobes. The way Kelly said you don't belong here. Her plan to hand over the property to strangers while calling me old and alone. And when I finished, he didn't look shocked. He just looked sad. I've seen this more times than I'd like to admit, he said quietly. Entitled kids. Weaponized guilt. The myth of generational gratitude. Is there anything else I can do? I asked. Yes, he said. Document everything. Every call. Every threat. Every manipulation attempt. Courts don't just care about what's right. They care about what's proven. I left his office feeling lighter, like I finally had a weapon to match the betrayal. But that calm didn't last long, because as I pulled into my driveway, my phone buzzed. A text from Kelly. Dad, Palmer's parents are driving up this weekend. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I stared at the screen. No apology. No explanation. Just another directive. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just a property grab. It was a takeover. And they were coming. I didn't respond to Kelly's text. I didn't need to. Her silence after my last no already told me everything. She wasn't reaching out to reconnect. She was laying down rules. The kind you give to a tenant. Not a father. But I wasn't a tenant. I was the damn architect. And I was done being quiet. So that Friday, I got in my car, packed nothing but my laptop, My legal papers, and the letter from Elizabeth. It sat in my jacket pocket like a compass, her words whispering behind every heartbeat. Don't let them weaponize your kindness. The drive to Lake Tahoe was long but focused. The trees that used to feel like sanctuary now looked like sentinels. I rolled past them slowly, watching the familiar landscape harden into something unfamiliar. By the time I pulled into the villa's driveway, dusk had fallen, but the lights were already on. And there, in the center of the gravel circle, sat a rented SUV with Ohio plates. Carl and Margaret Thompson had arrived. Palmer greeted me first. He looked uncomfortable, as if someone had dared him to be brave. Fred, didn't know you were coming. I opened the trunk without replying and lifted out a folder. No overnight bag. No pleasantries. Kelly stepped onto the porch, holding a cup of something steaming. Likely tea. She always liked chamomile when she was stressed. Her eyes narrowed when she saw me. I texted you. I said. Margaret appeared behind her, wearing slippers and one of those pastel floral robes you only see in retirement ads. Carl stood to the side, phone in hand, looking at the view like it already belonged to him. Dad, Kelly said carefully, this isn't the time for a scene. No scene, I said, stepping forward. I'm here to tell you in person that what you're doing is illegal. This property is under trust protection, and any attempt to occupy it as owners is now considered trespassing. Palmer blinked. What? I opened the folder and handed him a crisp document. Notarized. Filed. You're welcome to read it. Kelly scoffed. You're weaponizing legalese to control a family decision. That's low, Dad. I looked at her. Really looked. This wasn't the daughter who used to fall asleep in my lap after swim meets, or the one who cried when I missed her high school play. This was someone else. Someone who'd forgotten where she came from and who paid for every brick beneath her feet. This isn't about control, I said calmly. It's about boundaries and legality. Margaret stepped forward. We didn't ask for this. Fred, we just need a peaceful place to retire. I'm not your landlord, I replied. And this is not your retirement plan. Carl muttered something, then added, Look, no one's trying to fight. Why don't we just share it? Split weekends. That's not how ownership works, I said. Kelly folded her arms. You're doing this to hurt me. I almost laughed. No, Kelly. I'm doing this to stop you from hurting me. That night, I stayed at a motel down the road. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to see what they'd do when left alone with entitlement and no consequences. By Saturday morning, I had my answer. When I drove back up to the villa around 10 chong, Mum. The front porch had lawn chairs on it. New ones. Margaret was reading a magazine. Carl grilled sausages on a portable Weber grill like he was on a 4th of July vacation. They were settling in, as if none of my words had mattered. As if legality was just a suggestion. I pulled out my phone and opened the app linked to the smart security system I'd quietly reprogrammed on my last visit. The one I installed when Elizabeth got paranoid about bears and burglars. Tap, tap, tap. The front gate locked. The driveway gate quietly motorized slid shut. I watched their heads turn as the click echoed across the lawn. Then I activated the voice feature. Through the outdoor speakers, my voice rang out. This is a protected private property under registered trust. Any unauthorized occupancy will be reported. Carl dropped his tongs. Margaret stood up so fast she knocked over her tea. Kelly stormed out. What the hell is this? Just reminding you, I said, stepping out of the car, whose name is still on the deed. You can't do this. Legally, I absolutely can. Then I pulled out my phone again and showed them a time-stamped video clip. Palmer, sitting in the villa's kitchen days ago, while I had remote access running. His voice. We'll let them stay here for a few months. Fred doesn't use it. He's too old. Eventually, we sell it. Split the profit. Easy. I hit pause. Kelly's mouth dropped open. Palmer's face turned ashy. You recorded us, he asked, horrified. I raised an eyebrow. In my home. My property. Yes. California law says I can record in my own residence without consent. It was a bluff. California requires two-party consent in most cases, but neither of them knew that. And in this moment, the truth was a scalpel sharper than any statute. Margaret looked horrified. You said you were just borrowing the place. Carl, you were going to sell it? The circle of trust imploded in seconds. That's when Palmer turned on Kelly. You said your dad wouldn't fight it. You said he'd just walk away like always. Kelly's eyes were wet now. But it wasn't guilt. It was fury. At being outmaneuvered. You've crossed a line. She hissed. No. I said. You did. I just finally stopped moving the line to make room for you. I turned to walk back to my car. Behind me, Margaret started crying. Carl cursed under his breath. Kelly's voice cracked. You'll regret this. I stopped. Turned back. I already do. Then I got in my car, backed out slowly, and left them standing in the mess they made. But I wasn't finished, because next, I was going to bring the law. By Monday morning, they were gone. Carl, Margaret, Palmer, and even Kelly. No calls, no texts, no apology, just silence, like a retreating army regrouping after an ambush. And I wasn't celebrating. I was preparing for the war I knew was coming. Because you don't humiliate people like that, especially people who are used to getting their way and expect them to disappear quietly. Kelly had always been persistent. And Palmer had that quiet kind of arrogance. The kind that sits in silence during family dinners but moves money behind closed doors. I didn't trust either of them. Not anymore. So I sat back down with Marcus Chen, legal guardian angel in a charcoal suit. He handed me a folder thicker than my 401k plan. We filed the property trust. Title's protected. But we need to be proactive now. How so? I asked. He pulled out a second sheet, a forensic request to track financial activity. Palmer's got a paper trail. He's been moving money between business accounts. Small amounts. Just under IRS reporting thresholds. I frowned. How do you know that? Marcus gave a thin smile. You don't pay me to be polite, Fred. You pay me to be thorough. I read through the statements. Palmer's digital fingerprints were all over the place. Real estate shell companies. Offshore inquiries. Even a preliminary title search on my villa from a firm in Nevada. He was planning something. They were going to sell it. I said quietly. Weren't they? Marcus nodded. Flip it under a fake holding company. Rent it short-term or sell it out of state. You'd find out when it was too late. And by then, the paperwork would look clean. I sat back. The audacity. It wasn't just disrespectful. It was calculated. And now I understood why Kelly was so cold. She wasn't confused. She was complicit. Next move, I asked. Marcus opened his laptop and clicked through a series of forms. We file a cease and desist. Preemptively. Anyone attempting to market, lease, or advertise the property will be in legal violation. Then we file a notice of interest with the county. It puts a cloud on the title, flags any shady transactions. He paused. And we send a courtesy letter. Direct? To Palmer and Kelly. What kind of courtesy? I asked. He handed it to me. To whom it may concern. Please be advised that any attempt to claim, utilize, transfer, or advertise the real property located at 11 Redwood Bend, Lake Tahoe, without legal authorization will result in civil litigation. This includes verbal or written assertions of ownership. This letter serves as formal notification that said property is held in trust and is not transferable by any party not listed on the trust deed. We suggest you consult legal counsel. Marcus Chen, attorney at law. I didn't even have to read it twice. Send it, I said. Then I paused. And Marcus. Yeah. If you ever hear of a buyer sniffing around that villa, call me before you call the cops. His brows lifted. You expecting trouble? No, I said. I'm inviting it. Because I had something they didn't. Time, money, and absolutely nothing left to lose. The next week passed like a strange dream. I worked, gardened, played jazz records, drank coffee, watched sunsets. But behind it all was a low, simmering hum. The kind of tension that never fully releases. I kept thinking about that voice memo Elizabeth left me before she died. She'd recorded it on a Tuesday morning, 4 months before her passing. I played it again that Friday night. Fred, if something ever happens to me, don't let this house become an argument. Let it be a gift. But don't be blind. If people start taking instead of asking, that's not love. That's theft with a smile. I closed my eyes and whispered, "You saw this coming? Didn't you?" That night, I couldn't sleep. So I walked out to the garage and opened the cabinet where I kept my old project blueprints. Inside was a locked box. The one labeled, "Backup, Security Contractors, House Plans." I dusted it off and opened it. Inside, wiring diagrams, passcode logs, archived smart home recordings, and a USB labeled Fred Cam Jules V1. I smiled. Back when we first built the villa, I had a team install discrete security cameras, mostly outdoor, a few indoor, just for safety. Over the years, we upgraded the system, but I'd always kept the originals. And Elizabeth, she used to tease me for being paranoid. Sometimes, I said out loud, paranoia pays off. On Monday, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside, a formal petition for equitable ownership, filed by Kelly Carter. I stared at it. The argument that she had made non-financial contributions toward the maintenance of the villa and had reasonable expectation of future ownership. It was so bold it nearly impressed me. I called Marcus. "She's claiming expectation." Marcus sighed. "That's California family law for you. But don't worry, we're going to shut this down before it ever sees a courtroom." She really filed it. Yep. And Palmer's listed as her domestic financial partner. I nearly laughed. They're not even hiding anymore. Marcus added, "That's not the real kicker." "What is?" "There's a clause. They've requested temporary injunction, meaning if the judge grants it, they could get temporary access to the house again while proceedings are pending." I clenched the phone so tight my knuckles cracked. She wants to move back in. After everything. They want to take over legally. That was the moment I felt something shift in me. Anger. No. That had burned out. What came next was focus. Sharp. Surgical. I stood up, walked to my desk, opened my drawer and pulled out a small digital recorder. I pressed record. Kelly. Palmer. This isn't war. This is consequence. And just so you know, I'm going to show the court exactly who you are. Click. I saved the file. Labeled it. Goodbye. MP3. Because if they wanted a courtroom, I'd bring one. With receipts. The day the court papers arrived, I felt a strange mix of dread and relief. Dread because this fight wasn't going away. Relief because it was finally official, the battle lines were drawn. I sat on the porch of the villa, the very place Kelly had tried to push me out from, holding the crisp summons in my hands. The sun was warm on my back, but my mind was colder than the snow-capped peaks outside. Every memory with Elizabeth flickered, our laughter here, our dreams now clouded by betrayal. But this time, I wasn't alone. Marcus had assembled a small army of evidence. Not just the trust and title documents, but video footage, emails, even voice recordings. One recording stood out. Palmer, in his smug, whispery voice, caught on a hidden mic saying, "We'll sell the place as soon as Dad looks the other way. He's too old to care." That clip wasn't just proof. It was a message. I played it repeatedly, letting the weight of those words settle deep inside me. Because Palmer didn't just underestimate me. He forgot who I was. The first real confrontation happened a week later. The court hearing for the temporary injunction Walking into the courthouse felt surreal. The smell of polished wood, the murmur of lawyers preparing their cases. It was a world I had avoided for years. But now, it was my battlefield. Kelly and Palmer showed up, dressed sharp but nervous. Kelly's eyes darted around the courtroom as if searching for an escape route. I noticed Marcus by my side. Calm and focused, he whispered, "Stick to the facts, Fred. They'll crumble under truth." The judge entered, her presence commanding the room. The hearing began. Kelly's lawyer argued their right to temporary access, citing non-financial contributions and reasonable expectations. I clenched my fists as I waited. When it was our turn, Marcus stood and laid out the facts with surgical precision. He detailed the trust's legal status, the transfer restrictions, and, most importantly, the damning evidence against Palmer and Kelly's plan to flip the property. Then came the surprise. Marcus played the voice recording. The room fell silent. Palmer's smug admission echoed off the walls. Kelly's face drained of color. The judge nodded, making notes. When it was over, the judge ruled in our favor. No temporary access. The villa was off limits to Kelly and her in-laws while the case proceeded. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Walking out of that courtroom, the cold air felt like a balm. Victory tasted sweet. But the war was far from over. Back at the villa, I implemented even stricter security. Cameras positioned to catch every angle. New locks. Biometric scanners. I even installed motion sensors linked to my phone. I wasn't just protecting a house. I was defending a legacy. But the real twist came a few days later. Marcus called me late at night. "I've got something," he said. Voice low. "Go on." A witness. Palmer's former business partner. He's ready to testify about fraudulent transactions and deception. My heart hammered. This was bigger than just property. This was unraveling a web of lies. The next morning, I found myself pacing the villa's kitchen, the walls echoing with memories. Elizabeth's favorite mug sat empty on the counter. I reached for it, fingers trembling. "Dad, you're fighting a war with ghosts," I whispered to myself. But I was ready, because this wasn't just about a house. It was about reclaiming respect. And no one, not Kelly, Palmer, or their families, was going to take that from me. Then came the call that changed everything. Kelly's voice, trembling yet defiant. "We're not done." And with that, the quiet war exploded into a storm. The courtroom was silent, except for the steady hum of the air conditioning. My heart beat loud enough to drown out everything else. Kelly sat across from me, her face pale, eyes red-rimmed. Palmer shifted uncomfortably beside her. Their once confident aura had crumbled under the weight of evidence we'd presented. Marcus stood confidently at the front, laying out our case with precision: contracts, recordings, financial records, and testimonies from Palmer's former business partner, each piece chipped away at their claims. When the judge finally spoke, her voice was calm but firm. "Based on the evidence, the court rules that the property at 11 Redwood Bend, Lake Tahoe, remains the sole legal possession of Fred Carter. Any claims by Kelly Carter, Palmer Thompson, or their representatives are hereby dismissed." The words hit me like a wave, washing away months of pain and uncertainty. Kelly's shoulders slumped. Palmer's jaw clenched. The judge continued. "Furthermore, any attempt to occupy or transfer the property without Mr. Carter's consent will be considered contempt of court." As the gavel fell, I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. This wasn't just a legal victory, it was a restoration of my dignity. Later, back at the villa, I recorded a voice memo for Kelly. "Kelly, if you're listening, this isn't about hate. It's about respect. I loved you once, and I always will. But respect isn't just given, it's earned. You chose to walk away from that, and now you face the consequences. Don't come back here. Not for your sake, not for mine." I hit send and let the silence settle. Days later, word spread. Kelly and Palmer moved back to Ohio. their plans unraveling. Carl and Margaret, embarrassed and defeated, followed. I stood on the villa's porch, the lake stretching out like a mirror reflecting my past and future. A soft breeze carried the scent of pine and fresh cedar, the smell of home. Marcus called. "You won." "Fred, how does it feel?" "Like I got my life back," I said. But even in victory, I knew the scars remained. Family isn't just blood. It's trust, respect, and sometimes hard boundaries. And sometimes the hardest battles lead to the deepest healing. Standing on the porch of the villa, the late afternoon sun painted the lake with golden streaks. The scent of pine mixed with the faint aroma of Elizabeth's favorite jasmine candles, still flickering softly inside. The house felt alive again. But I knew it wasn't just the bricks and mortar that made it home. It was the fight, the hard-won battle to reclaim respect and dignity that breathed life back into these walls. I ran my fingers over the rough cedar railing, remembering the summers Elizabeth and I spent here, dreaming about a future that felt so certain, so full of promise. She had always said, "This place is more than a house. It's our legacy." But legacy isn't just about what you build. It's about who you trust to keep it alive. Kelly chose differently. Her betrayal wasn't just about property. It was about breaking a bond that can never be rebuilt with money or legal papers. It was about the cruel echo of "you don't belong here," words that cut deeper than any courtroom battle. Yet, even as I stand victorious, I can't help but feel the sting of loss, not just for the villa, but for the family I once hoped we'd be. This fight revealed something deeper. The fracture between generations. The clash of values in a rapidly changing America. I am of a generation that believed in hard work, loyalty, and sacrificed the pillars of the American dream. Kelly belongs to a new world that values entitlement, pragmatism, and instant results. She saw my kindness as weakness. I saw her ambition as blindness. Perhaps that's the real cost of this battle. But I learned something crucial through it all. That love isn't enough to hold a family together. Sometimes, boundaries are the greatest act of love. Because protecting what matters means knowing when to stand firm and when to walk away. Before I left the porch that evening, I recorded one last voice memo for Kelly. Not out of anger, but out of hope. "Kelly, I don't know what the future holds for us, or if we'll ever find our way back to each other. But I want you to know this. No matter what, I wish you strength. I hope you build your own legacy, one built on respect and love. Not just titles and deeds. Maybe one day, you'll understand why I had to fight. Until then, I'll keep the lights on here, waiting for that day." I sent the message, then looked out over the still lake, feeling a strange peace settle in my chest. Because while this chapter closes, life like the water moves forward, carrying us to places we never expected. So, what's the takeaway here? Family isn't just about blood. It's about trust, respect, and shared memories. When those are broken, no house or inheritance can fix what's lost. This story isn't just mine. It's for anyone who's ever felt betrayed by someone they loved. For those who've faced impossible choices between family and self-respect, if there's one thing I want you to remember, it's this: justice isn't revenge. It's restoring balance, standing up for what's right without losing yourself. And sometimes, that means saying no, even to the ones you love most. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to set a hard boundary with family? How did it change you? Drop your story in the comments below. You never know who might need to hear it. And if you believe that love and justice can coexist, please like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more stories that dig beneath the surface. Thank you for listening. Until next time, stay strong and stand tall. Just when I thought peace had returned, a knock came at the villa door late one night. Slow, intentional. I opened it to find an envelope with no name. Inside, a single photo of the villa burned around the edges, and a note. "This isn't over, Fred." Story 2. My name is Henry Blake. I'm 62 years old. And last Thursday, my only son fired me from the company I built from scratch, in front of a dozen board members, in front of Lisa Chang, our COO, in front of a conference room that used to fall silent when I entered until that morning, when no one could even meet my eyes. Get out, Dad. You're fired. That was it. No thank you. No apology. Not even a second glance. Just, get out. I didn't shout. Didn't protest. I just stared at Trevor, 35. Polished. Jaw clenched around a smug little smirk he learned from watching too many TED Talks. The folder in my lap trembled. Not from weakness. From rage. From restraint. The same hands that once held his during night terrors were now gripping a file labeled confidential. And if my hunch was right, the real power wasn't in the boardroom, it was locked in Trevor's private safe, behind that god-awful abstract painting he insisted was post-visionary modernist. Whatever that meant, I didn't cry. But make no mistake, I grieved. Not for my job. For the boy who used to run into my arms yelling, "Daddy, look what I made." That boy was gone. It all went down in our top-floor office in downtown Chicago. Glass walls. Cold light. Warm coffee, none of it felt like mine anymore. Lisa was leaned back in her chair. Earrings like ice picks. Voice sugar-dipped but laced with poison. "Henry, your audits are slowing us down," she said smoothly, fingers tapping her tablet like a metronome of dismissal. "We need agility, not nostalgia." I said nothing, just looked around the table at the people I'd trained, mentored, sometimes even covered for. Not one defended me. Not even Mike, the one I once drove home after his wife kicked him out, drunk and crying. That's when Trevor stood, Rolex flashing like it had something important to say. He jabbed his finger across the table. "You're stuck in the past. Bright path needs evolution, not dead weight." That was when he fired me. Just like that. Lisa smiled. The interns looked away. Someone gasped. And then silence. It was the kind of silence that feels like a funeral. But the part that really killed me? Trevor tossed my folder onto the table. The papers fluttered like broken wings. I'd once held this company in my hands like something sacred. Now he discarded it like a coffee receipt. I walked out slow. Not because I was in shock, but because I wanted them to see every step. Let them feel it. My office was already open. Someone had gone through my things. I could feel it. The air had changed. Disturbed. The only thing untouched was the photo of Ellen, my late wife, smiling like she always did when I needed her most. I slid it into my pocket like armor. And just as I turned to leave, I passed Lisa's desk. That's when I saw it. A folder. Marked client accounts, red. My mind flickered. Red folders meant audit anomalies. But this wasn't my desk. Why was this on hers? A voice in my head whispered, "Don't just walk away." "Henry." My hand brushed the folder. But I didn't take it. Not yet. I just smiled to myself and kept walking. But the plan had already started writing itself. And Thursday would be eventful. Outside. It was raining. Of course it was. Chicago rain isn't gentle. It's like the sky itself wants to scrub the city clean. My coat soaked within seconds, my shoes squelching against the pavement as I passed people too busy to notice a man carrying 11 years of loyalty in a cardboard box. At the corner, I tossed my office key into a trash can. It made a small, hollow clang. I kept the real key in my pocket. The old, rusted one. The one they didn't revoke. Because Trevor didn't know I still had access through the back freight elevator. He forgot that I built the damn place. Back at home. The house creaked like it had aged with me. I put the box on the table and collapsed into the old leather chair Ellen used to call my thinking throne. Her picture was there, propped up beside a stack of unpaid medical bills and a half-finished crossword puzzle. I stared at her for a long time. "You'd know what to do," I muttered. Her smile, as always, offered no answer. Just warmth. And memory. The memory of all the nights I missed while building Bright Path. The anniversaries skipped. The birthdays I dialed in from hotel rooms. Also, Trevor could inherit something with weight and meaning. And now he'd turned it into a shell company. Empty branding. Inflated projections. The kind of startup garbage that wins pitch contests but loses souls. That's when it hit me. He was laundering contracts. It wasn't just bad business, it was criminal. I remembered a night, maybe a year ago. I had found a client report in Trevor's desk numbers that didn't add up. When I'd asked him, he brushed it off like I'd misread it. But now, I remembered the panic in his eyes. He'd shoved it into the safe behind that painting. I knew it. And guess what? That painting, I bought it. I installed the mount. I even installed the safes. He thought I was gone. But I knew exactly where the bodies were buried. I pulled out my old leather-bound notebook, the one Ellen gave me when I got my first patent. I started writing. Contact Claire. Tribune. She owes me one. Tom Alvarez. Lawyer. Retired but still sharp. Office entry. Thursday night. After 10 p.m., cameras blind from 9. 50,010. 15. Objective. Retrieve doc. Scan. Duplicate. Leverage. I paused. My hands were shaking. Was I really doing this? Was I really planning to dismantle my son? The weight of it sank in. Then Ellen's picture caught the light just right. For a moment, I saw her in that final hospital room, whispering, "You're stronger than you think." I opened the drawer beside the fireplace. Among old receipts and expired batteries, I found it. My old access key. Rusted. Faded BrightPath logo barely visible. I hadn't really thrown the key away. That was for show. I placed it on the table next to Ellen's picture. Like an oath. A promise. Not revenge. Not rage. Just the truth. At any cost. I grabbed a pen and started drafting a letter. Not for Trevor. For the board. For the public. For Ellen. For myself. And as I scribbled, the rain outside softened. For the first time in days, I felt steady. Clear. But then, my phone buzzed. Trevor. One text. No greeting. No apology. Just, don't come near the office again. We've changed all codes. I chuckled. You think codes will stop me? Son, I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table, one hand cradling Ellen's photo, the other tracing the edges of my old access key, its metal cold. Rusted. But still solid. Like me? Maybe that's why I never threw it away. Not truly. It was the one piece of the company that still obeyed me. Outside, the rain had slowed. But inside, my mind roared. The house creaked and settled. Like it remembered Ellen too. I could almost hear her hum as she made tea, her fingers brushing my shoulder when I'd worked too late. Henry, you're not your company. She used to whisper, you're more than what you build. But I was BrightPath. I poured every hour, every anniversary, every ounce of pride into it. And now, Trevor was repackaging it into some sleek, hollow shell for venture capitalists with soft hands and sharp suits. People who didn't care about code integrity or developer ethics, just buzzwords and burn rates. That betrayal burned more than the firing itself. It wasn't just that he pushed me out. It was that he never looked back. The next morning, I found the old notebook where I'd tracked the original patent filings for our product suite. On the first page, scrawled in Ellen's handwriting, "Build something worth your name." I slammed it shut. It wasn't revenge I wanted. It was correction. Course correction. Justice, not fire. Clarity, not chaos. My phone buzzed again. Tom Alvarez. Former partner. Now retired lawyer. Used to have a spine of steel and a soft spot for Ellen. Tom, I said, trying to sound casual. Henry. His voice hadn't changed, gruff. Clipped. Like sandpaper over oak. You okay? I hesitated. Trevor's hiding something. Tax manipulation. Possibly worse. He changed the board login codes. He paused. You're telling me your son cut you out after you built his company? Not just cut me out. He's laundering money under new shell vendors. I saw the draft report once, before it disappeared into that damn safe. Tom sighed. Then don't talk. Prove it. Quietly. And for God's sake, don't confront him without leverage. You remember the Madison case? I remember, I muttered. That case had ended in public ruin. For the wrong guy. Henry, his voice softened. Are you doing this for the company? Or because he's your son? Both. I said honestly, but I won't let blood blind me to truth. Then get that document. Bring it to me. We'll move carefully. I hung up and flipped through Ellen's old keepsake box. Tucked between her art show flyers and a faded scarf, I found what I was really looking for. A copy of the original Bright Path investor letter signed by both of us. The moment we'd believed in Trevor's potential. The irony wasn't lost on me. I tucked it in my folder. Maybe someone needed reminding that once upon a time, this company stood for more than just money. That afternoon, I called Claire. Claire Newsom. Her voice chirped on the other end. Still upbeat. Still fast-talking. Still the best damn financial journalist in Chicago. It's Henry Blake, I said. Ellen's husband. Silence. Then a soft inhale. Mr. Blake. I still have one of Ellen's pieces on my desk. Her pastel series. She loved that set. I replied quietly. What's going on? I have something that might interest you. A potential fraud case. Internal corporate. Tied to Bright Path. Claire's tone changed instantly. Is your name still associated? Technically, no. But morally, absolutely. If you have paperwork, I'll look at it. Off the record. For now, I'll bring you something. Thursday. And just like that, I'd set the clock. Thursday night, 10:03 p.m. I stood outside the rear freight entrance of Bright Path Solutions, once my kingdom, now guarded by a motion sensor and a bored overnight cleaning crew. I knew the rhythm. I designed it. The rusted key slid into the manual lock like it was greeting an old friend. Click. The hallway smelled like lemon-scented bleach and something sterile newer than I remembered. They'd remodeled. Polished floors. LED lights. Everything faster. Colder. More forgettable. But the bones were still mine. I slipped through the side corridor. Avoiding the security cameras I'd once installed. Blind spots still worked. Most employees forgot they existed. I didn't. At Trevor's office door, I paused. The painting still hung there. Still ugly. Still arrogant. But I had mounted it myself back in 16 behind it. A wall safe. I reached behind the canvas, feeling for the groove in the drywall. There. I pressed, turned, and the frame lifted. The keypad blinked. Trevor might have changed the digital codes, but I had a backup. A master override, a legacy code, buried deep in the firmware. 8112. Ellen's birthday. The lock clicked. Inside the safe. 3 USBs. A leather folder. And a bottle of whiskey half empty. I grabbed the folder. Opened it. Bingo. Shell contracts. Discrepant invoices. Paper trails tied to Lisa's old client accounts. He was routing revenue through offshore dummy corporations, misstating profits to inflate Bright Path's value for a future acquisition. If that deal went through, it'd be federal. My hands shook, but I kept my breath steady. Take it. Copy it. Seal it. I pulled out my phone, snapped photos, plugged in a secure USB. This was leverage now. Truth. Captured in pixels and code. As I slipped the documents back and sealed the safe, a voice behind me froze the blood in my veins. Dad. Trevor. His silhouette filled the doorway. Tie loose. Shirt wrinkled. Eyes bloodshot. Jesus, he muttered. What are you doing here? For a second, we both stood in silence, like two strangers inside a memory. Then I smiled calmly. I forgot my mug. Dad, you need to stop digging. Before someone gets hurt. Trevor's voice was low, almost calm. But I knew that tone. That wasn't fear. That was control masquerading as concern. I turned to face him fully. Behind him, the hallway light framed his figure like a statue, immovable, emotionless. For a moment, I searched his face for the boy I once knew. Nothing. Just a man in an expensive suit who had forgotten what it cost to build something real. "You're here late," I said, adjusting my coat like I hadn't just cracked open his safe. He stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "Security pinged an entry. I came to check myself. Didn't expect it to be you." He looked down at my hand, still resting on the painting. I made no effort to hide it. "You think this is a game?" he asked. "No," I replied, calm and deliberate. "I think this is a crime." Just a flicker of panic crossed his face, then vanished. He straightened his shoulders. "You can't prove anything. And even if you could, who'd believe you? You're a disgruntled founder. Retired. Cut off. You've got no stake left." I took a breath. I may not have shares, Trevor, but I still have principles. And contacts. And memory. Memory won't hold up in court. No. But documents will. That did it. He blanched. "You went into my safe. You made it easy. You forgot who built the damn company. Son." For a second, silence. Then he stepped forward closer than I liked. "I'm warning you, Dad. Stay out of this. Let it go." I looked him dead in the eye. "You already let go of me. Of what Bright Path was. Now it's my turn." He stared a moment longer, then turned on his heel and walked out. Back at home. The adrenaline crash hit hard. I collapsed into the armchair, heart pounding. Ellen's picture stared at me like a question I couldn't answer. When did he become this? Was I too blind? Too busy? Too proud? I thought about the late nights, the parent-teacher conferences I missed, the weekends I spent coding instead of coaching. I gave Trevor everything, except my time. And now, someone else had shaped his values. Someone like Lisa. The next morning, Tom called. "You've stirred the hornet's nest." He grumbled. "He knows." Saw me. Tom cursed under his breath. "All right, send me what you've got. Secure email. And stop going in alone. We're in exposure territory now. I'm not backing down. I didn't ask you to. Just don't be reckless." Too late for that. By noon, I was at a downtown cafe, folder under my arm, waiting for Claire. She arrived in a navy coat and confidence. Still fast. Still sharp. I slid the manila envelope across the table. "What's this?" she asked. "Whistleblower package. Unofficial. For now, includes copies of invoices, shell vendors, and 2 wire trails to offshore accounts linked to Lisa Chang." Her eyebrows lifted. "Lisa. She's the real brains behind the laundering. Trevor's the face. She's the hands." Claire flipped through the documents, her lips tightening. "Where'd you get this?" "I built the safe." She let out a dry laugh. "Of course you did. You'll need to vet it," I said. "But if you find this credible, I want the story out. Not for revenge. For correction." "Fair enough," she said. "But once this hits press, there's no putting it back in the box." "I know." She paused, then softened. Ellen would have been proud. That hit like a knife, but a needed one. Meanwhile, Trevor wasn't sitting still. That evening, a letter arrived at my door. Cease and desist. From Bright Path Legal. Accusing me of trespassing, theft, defamation. I poured a glass of bourbon and read it twice. Slowly, then I called Tom. He laughed bitter. "Tired. That's a scare tactic. They're rattled. He's escalating. Then so do we." The next 48 hours moved fast. Tom contacted a financial investigator he trusted from an old SEC case. I passed the files to him, along with timestamps and metadata. Claire started digging into Lisa's consulting firm, and I made another visit to the board. You see, Trevor may have thought he locked me out, but I still knew a few of the old guard. The kind of men and women who'd stuck around because they believed in what we built. People who remembered when Bright Path was a mission, not a market cap. Board member 3, Kenneth Durham, agreed to meet privately. He was cautious, older, skeptical. I heard rumors, he said. I didn't want to believe them. You don't have to, I said, sliding him a USB. But the numbers don't lie, and neither do the names. He scanned a few pages, his jaw clenched. If this is true, Trevor and Lisa are risking everything. They already have. Later that night, I stood in the hallway of my home, staring at the shelf of patents we'd once celebrated as a family. The plaque that read Founder H. Blake had gathered dust. I picked it up, wiped it clean. Ellen's photo was still on the mantel. I spoke to it like a man desperate for peace. Did I fail him? Or did I just believe in a version of him that never really existed? The house didn't answer. But I remembered something she once told me. In the weeks before she passed, sometimes, Henry, the legacy we leave is how we hold the line when it's easiest to step back. The next morning, I received a text. Unknown number. If you go public, I go nuclear. You're not the only one with history. Think about that. L. Lisa. So now it was blackmail. I stared at the message, hands trembling but not from fear. From restraint. They didn't just want the company. They wanted the story rewritten. Well, I was about to write my own ending. I didn't respond to Lisa's text. Not because I wasn't tempted to. Not because I wasn't angry. But because in moments like that, silence weighs more than words. And fear, when weaponized, becomes fuel. She thought I'd flinch. She thought the threat of exposure would buckle me. But I had already been stripped bare by grief, betrayal, and time. There was nothing left she could take from me, except the truth. And that, I wasn't handing over. The next morning, I drove west out of the city, past the suburbs, and into a part of Illinois where startups didn't exist and nobody cared about stock options. I needed quiet, clarity. I pulled into a dirt lot near an old Lutheran chapel Ellen once loved. It was where she used to sit, sketching in silence for hours. I stood in the biting wind, clutching her scarf in one hand and the USB in the other. I closed my eyes. How do you bring justice without destruction? How do you stop your own son without losing yourself? And then I realized I couldn't ask that question anymore. Trevor made his choice. Lisa made hers. This wasn't about stopping him. It was about stopping what he'd become. That night, I called Claire. They've started pushing. I told her. Threats. Legal pressure. They know we're close. Which means, she said, they're afraid. She was already 3 steps ahead. I've spoken to a compliance auditor off record. SEC is interested. But they won't move without a nudge. We need a public event. A trigger. A press release. She paused. Bigger. I heard her typing. Then, Trevor's scheduled to keynote the TechBridge Midwest Conference next week. Thursday. Chicago Civic Hall. My stomach dropped. That conference had been my idea back when BrightPath still meant something. It used to showcase mission-driven innovation. Now, it was just another glitzy PR stage. They're planning a full-on acquisition announcement, she added, with falsified numbers. That's the moment. She was right. I didn't need to just whisper truth. I needed to inject it publicly. Undeniably. Irrevocably. I called Tom next. Conference is our window, I said. I want to move. Then we prepped the board. He said. They'll need cover to act. You've got Durham, right? I do. And 2 more on the fence. Send them the clean version. Strip emotion. Just facts. I nodded. And what about Lisa's threat? She's bluffing. If she had anything real, she'd have used it already. Stick to the path. Henry. The next 4 days blurred into one long breath. I met with Kenneth Durham again this time, in a quiet side room at the university club. He looked exhausted, older than last week. They're inflating revenue by over 28%, I said, sliding the updated file to him. He flipped through, brow furrowed. This, if it leaks, BrightPath's acquisition will collapse. That's the idea. He looked up. And Trevor. I didn't flinch. He'll survive. But he won't take the company down with him. By Wednesday night, I had the full package ready. A time-stamped timeline of the laundering scheme, internal memos signed by Lisa, Shell vendor receipts, cross-referenced with wire transfers, a whistleblower letter co-signed by Tom, sent directly to the board and the SEC, and one last thing, a short, personal video. Just me, on camera, no script, no edits. My name is Henry Blake. I was the founder and former CEO of BrightPath Solutions. If you're watching this, it's because the company I built is in danger not from outsiders, but from within. I spoke slowly, clearly, about integrity, about betrayal, about my late wife, and how we named the company for what we believed people deserved. A bright path forward. I didn't accuse, I invited truth. And then, I ended with this. Somewhere along the way, we forgot why we started. This isn't about revenge. This is about redemption. And maybe, if we're lucky about recovery, conference day arrived. I didn't attend in person. I watched from a quiet diner 4 blocks away, a laptop in front of me and Tom on speaker. Trevor took the stage in a tailored navy suit, spotlights gleaming. The crowd applauded like he'd just landed on Mars. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, smile wide. We at BrightPath are proud to announce our next chapter, an exciting acquisition that will take us global. Right on cue. Claire's email blast hit inboxes across the tech world. Subject line: Whistleblower. BrightPath, facing internal corruption allegations. Underneath, the link to my video, the files, the documentation. Within 5 minutes, Twitter exploded. People stood mid-conference, checking phones. Whispers spread. Screens lit up. Eyes darted. Trevor faltered, stammered. And then someone from the board walked on stage. Kenneth Durham. He leaned toward the mic. Mr. Blake's allegations are under immediate review. We advise postponing any acquisition discussions until further notice. The room fell into chaos. Trevor froze, then stormed off stage. And me, I sat in that booth, coffee cold, heart pounding, feeling nothing and everything all at once. That night, Tom called. It's done. They've suspended Trevor pending internal investigation. Lisa resigned 2 hours ago. SEC wants a meeting Monday. Good, I whispered. But the line stayed quiet. Because neither of us were celebrating. It didn't feel like a win. It felt like a burial. I returned home to find a small envelope on my porch. No stamp. No signature. Inside, a single note. Handwritten. Congratulations. Henry, you finally tore it all down. But be careful what rises from the ashes. I turned it over. Nothing else. Just the faint scent of her perfume. 2 days after the conference, I watched the morning news from my recliner. The volume low and the coffee gone cold. There was Trevor. Once the golden boy of Midwest tech, now reduced to a B-roll image beside the headline, BrightPath CEO suspended, amid allegations of fraud and misconduct. His posture on screen was slumped, the fire gone from his eyes. I studied his face not as a whistleblower, but as a father. I saw not a villain, but a man unraveling, one thread at a time. I did that. I had to, but knowing that didn't make it easier. My phone lit up with a new message from Claire. SEC is moving. Lisa's passport flagged. They think she's trying to leave the country. Seconds later, another message from Tom. Board vote scheduled. Monday 9 a.m. Motion. Permanent removal of Trevor Blake. I sat back, breath heavy. It was happening. The final curtain was drawing near. But something inside me buzzed off beat, unsettled. Because here's the thing about justice. It doesn't come clean. It comes with collateral. That afternoon, I opened my email and found something I didn't expect. From Trevor Blake. Subject: We need to talk. Just us. The message was short. You want to look me in the eye before they vote. Meet me at Mom's mural. Sunday. 6 p.m. No lawyers. No press. Just a man and his father. I stared at it for a long time, heart pounding. Then I replied with one word. Yes. Sunday came cloaked in fog. The kind that hangs over Chicago like a second skin. Damp. Heavy. Unsure. I drove to the mural. It was still there, tucked in an alley wall between two crumbling brick buildings. Ellen's final piece. A swirl of color. Chaos. And light. Shaped like an open doorway. Her vision of hope. We used to come here every year on her birthday. Until Trevor stopped showing up. He was already there when I arrived. Hood up. Hands in pockets. Face hollow. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he broke the silence. You ruined me, Dad. I stayed calm. You ruined yourself. I just stopped shielding you. He scoffed. Spare me the lecture. You wanted control back, and you took it. No. I wanted to stop watching you destroy what we built. You turned our name into currency. You let Lisa weaponize my life's work. He turned toward the mural. I didn't want this, he muttered. I didn't plan it this way. That's the worst part. Trevor, you didn't plan anything. You just drifted into corruption like it was convenience. He clenched his jaw. You always expected too much of me. I expected standards. A long pause. Then he said something that caught me completely off guard. She told me you were dying. What? Lisa, he said. Barely audible. She told me last year that you were sick. She said you had 6 months at best. That's why she pushed for control. She said we had to stabilize the future. My blood ran cold. I stepped back, heart racing. You believed her. She showed me a forged diagnosis letter, claimed you didn't want to tell me because of your pride, and instead of asking me, you just let her carve up everything. He looked down. I didn't know what to believe, and by then, we were in too deep. That was the twist I never saw coming. Lisa didn't just manipulate finances, she manipulated reality. She isolated us, pitted us. She didn't need loyalty, just distance. She won by making me a ghost. I stood there, stunned. The rain began to mist again. The mural behind us blurred, the colors bleeding together. Trevor turned to me one last time. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know it wasn't all me. And then, quietly, he walked away. That night, I sat in my study, staring at Ellen's scarf. The hurt was still raw, but now it came with new weight. What if he'd been manipulated as much as me? Still, guilt doesn't erase damage. Regret doesn't absolve misconduct. I picked up the board file again. Their vote was still on. I could stop it, delay it. But that would mean letting a man my son stay in power while under investigation. So I did what I always did when I couldn't sleep. I wrote. At 3 a.m., I sent a short letter to Kenneth Durham. Just one paragraph. Regardless of familial tie, I urge the board to act in the best interest of Bright Path, its mission, and its employees. We do not correct legacy by protecting ego. We correct it by honoring truth. Henry Blake. Monday morning. The vote passed. 6-1. Trevor Blake. Permanently removed as CEO. By noon, it was everywhere. TechCrunch, CNBC, Reddit. Brightpath stock dipped slightly, then stabilized. Investors liked decisive ethics. PR loved redemption arcs. America, after all, always had a soft spot for second acts. But the one person I hadn't heard from was Trevor. Until 6:41 p.m. Another message. This time, a video. He sat in what looked like a hotel room. Face pale. Shirt undone. "I guess I'm finally free," he said with a tired smile. "Tell Mom I'm sorry. I'm going away for a while. Don't worry, I'm not doing anything stupid. I just need time. You got what you wanted?" "Dad, I hope it was worth it." I watched it twice. Then again, not because I needed to, but because some endings hurt more than betrayals. The morning after Trevor vanished, I woke to silence. No news. No updates. No more threats. Just quiet. It was the kind of quiet you'd expect to feel triumphant, but instead, it was hollow, like I'd pushed a boulder up a hill for months, only to find the summit barren. Brightpath was safe. The truth was out. Lisa was being investigated. Trevor was gone. But peace wasn't part of the package. I walked to the park Ellen used to sketch in. Spring had just begun its slow crawl through Chicago buds, pushing against frost. Grass fighting for green. There was a bench near the lake where she used to sit, wrapped in that same maroon scarf I now wore like armor. I sat there a long time. Every victory has a receipt. Mine was grief-shaped. The company was mine again. In name but not in spirit. Trevor's absence left an echo. Every hallway he once walked, every desk he moved, every handshake he faked still lingered. I wasn't sure if I missed him, or just the dream of who I once thought he could become. That evening, Claire called. "They arrested Lisa at O'Hare," she said flatly. She was boarding a flight to Singapore. Fake ID. Altered documents. I exhaled through my teeth. She never planned to stay and clean it up. Nope. She was ready to burn the bridge and vanish. And Trevor. No sign. We've flagged his accounts. But he hasn't touched a cent. My heart dropped. "You think he's okay?" "I think he's unraveling," she said. "But he's not stupid. Just broken." That word broken hung in the air. I ended the call and stared at my phone for a long time. No son is born broken. But some break trying to meet expectations no one explained. 2 days passed. Then 3. On the 4th day, I received a letter. Hand-delivered. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of notebook paper, folded in half. "Dad, I'm in Ohio. Don't worry. I'm not doing anything reckless. I'm staying with a friend from college, someone who knew me before everything got complicated. I'm trying to figure out who I am without the company. Without Lisa. Without you. I don't blame you anymore. But I also don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe someday." I read the letter 3 times. The first time, I felt relief. The second, shame. The third, something closer to hope. That weekend, I stood in front of the Brightpath building again. It looked the same, glass and steel and ambition. But the energy had changed. I walked through the lobby unnoticed. No longer the man people whispered about. Just a ghost visiting the scene of a fire. On the top floor, I stepped into what used to be my office. Now, it was being restructured into a shared innovation space. More light, fewer walls, more voices. And on the desk, the old brass plaque. Henry Blake, founder. Someone had polished it. A small gesture. But in that moment, it felt like grace. Tom met me in the cafeteria. He'd shaved for once. Shirt tucked in. Looked 10 years younger. "You're staying on the board, right?" he asked. "For now," I said. "But not forever." He nodded. "You deserve rest." "No," I said. "I deserve to let go. There's a difference." We sipped coffee in silence. Then he leaned forward. "There's talk of renaming the ethics scholarship after you. The one we sponsor at MIT." I laughed. Ethics. After me. You didn't just expose a fraud. Henry, you stood up when nobody else would. That matters. I smiled faintly. I didn't do it alone. I said. You kept me anchored. Claire gave me reach. Kenneth gave me a chance. And Ellen? He asked. I looked out the window. She gave me the reason. Back at home that evening, I sat down to write again. Not another whistleblower letter. Not a statement for the press. But a message. For Trevor. I read your letter. I'm proud you left. That you're thinking. That you're hurting. Because it means you still feel. I won't pretend I got everything right. I pushed too hard. Held on too long. But I never stopped loving you. I still don't. Come home when you're ready. Or don't. But know this. The door will always be open. Dad. I printed it. Folded it. Mailed it. And waited. 2 weeks later. A package arrived at my door. Inside. A USB stick and a handwritten note. For when the world forgets what we stood for. Use this only if the story starts to rot again. See, Claire had archived the entire whistleblower dossier proof, reports, cross-references, video files, a backup, a safeguard. It was her way of saying, you're not alone in guarding the truth. I tucked the USB inside Ellen's old sketchbook, between 2 pages of ink and memory, because justice isn't a one-time act. It's a torch passed. A month passed. Then 2. Life quieted. The news cycle moved on, chasing the next scandal. BrightPath issued a formal apology, scrubbed its executive page, and installed a new interim CEO, an ethics professor from Northwestern. If you can believe that, the kind of choice you make when you're desperate to be taken seriously again. Tom stayed on as COO. Claire transitioned to a board oversight role. And me, I stepped away. I didn't disappear. I just returned to the man I was before ambition got loud, before power got personal. I took morning walks, cleaned out old drawers, found pieces of Ellen I'd forgotten, half-filled notebooks, receipts from trips we never took, postcards addressed to Trevor that were never sent. And one morning, I found something else, tucked inside an envelope marked private, only if things fall apart. It was her handwriting. Inside was a short letter, and a photograph of Trevor as a boy, maybe 6 years old, sitting on my shoulders, both of us covered in paint from the mural we tried to fix for her birthday. Her words were short, but they burned deep. If you're reading this, it means things broke in a way I hoped they never would. But Henry, don't confuse punishment with parenting. Trevor won't become better through humiliation. He'll only become quieter. And silence isn't growth, it's just hiding. If he ever falls, catch him with something stronger than pride. Catch him with love. I sat there with the letter in my lap for over an hour. I didn't cry. I didn't move. But something inside me cracked open and light, the soft kind, leaked back in. Later that week, I drove down to a community center on the south side. One BrightPath used to fund back when our mission wasn't just PR. They were hosting a youth coding boot camp, mostly first-gen kids. Rough neighborhoods. Big dreams. I walked in unannounced, introduced myself as just Henry, and sat in the back. I listened to them pitch startup ideas like their lives depended on it. One girl, maybe 13, talked about creating a budgeting app for single moms. Another kid wanted to build a wearable that detects rising cortisol in kids with PTSD. They didn't care about valuation, or exits, or acquisitions. They cared about solving real problems. I smiled. This was why I'd built BrightPath. Not for Trevor. Not for legacy. But for possibility. A week later, I received a phone call. Blocked number. Male voice. Strained. Hey, it's me. Trevor. My throat tightened. You okay? I asked. Pause. I think so. He said. I'm in Flagstaff. Working construction. Friend's company. It's not glamorous. But it's real. I nodded. even though he couldn't see me. I'm glad. Another pause. Then, Dad, I want to come home. Just for a visit. I swallowed the lump in my throat. There's always a place for you here, I said. Always. When he arrived 3 days later, he looked older but not worn. Sun-touched skin, calloused hands, no watch, no phone glued to his palm, just a duffel bag and a bottle of coffee creamer he knew I liked. We didn't talk business. We didn't dissect the past. We grilled burgers, watched the Cubs lose, shared silence like a language we both finally understood. Later that night, as we sat on the porch, he pulled something from his coat. A flash drive. Lisa kept backups. Deep backups. Files from years ago. Even before I took over. She didn't want you to know. He handed it to me. I thought it was over. I said, "So did I," he replied. But I couldn't sit with it. You should see it. That night, I opened the files. Inside were records. Shocking ones. One of the earliest seed investors in BrightPath, a man I'd trusted, had been laundering funds through dummy accounts since before Trevor ever stepped into the company. It meant the rot started long ago. Long before Trevor. Long before Lisa. Long before me and Ellen were even married. All this time, I thought Trevor corrupted the company. But maybe he had only inherited a lie. A curse disguised as a dream. I sat in my study, staring at the fire. The scarf Ellen made rested on my lap. What do you do when you realize you weren't the beginning of the story? That maybe, just maybe, the system was poisoned long before you ever thought you were building something pure. You don't destroy it again. You don't run. You rebuild with your eyes open this time. The next day, I called Claire. There's more, I said. I figured. She sighed. The corruption in this world doesn't start with the Trevor Blakes. It starts with the ones who never get caught. We're going to expose them, I said. She paused, then softly replied, "Good. Let's finish what you started." Months passed. Trevor stayed on, not as an executive, not in tech, but as a quiet consultant for BrightPath's new integrity lab, an internal audit and mentoring division designed to catch rot before it grows roots. He didn't want the spotlight. He wanted a purpose. And me. I started teaching again. One class a week at DePaul. Ethics and innovation. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt real. On the last day of the semester, a student asked, "What's the most important thing you've ever built?" I thought of Trevor, of Ellen, of BrightPath. And I answered, "A second chance."